So paranasal air sinuses, air filled spaces inside the skull bone are nothing but the paranasal air sinuses. Okay, so suppose this is the nasal septum. Okay, on either side of the nasal septum, see, this is one orbit and this is another orbit. Okay, right orbit, left orbit. So that means on towards the medial aspect of the like medial wall of the orbit, you are finding so many empty spaces. Okay, that means we have anterior, middle and posterior ethmoidal air sinuses. So this one is anterior. Here you can see middle ethmoidal air sinus. Okay, as we go behind, you will also have posterior ethmoidal air sinus. Okay, inside the maxilla bone, see, this cheekbone is maxilla bone. If you just break this bone and see, it will be like a box, and here inside we have empty space, that is maxillary air sinus. Okay, then in the sphenoid bone, in the skull bone, we have the sphenoidal air sinus. See, this is the place where we have pituitary gland, the pituitary fossa, sella turcica. If you chip it out, okay, below that also you will find empty air filled space. This is the sphenoidal air sinus. And inside the frontal bone, here if we chip out the frontal bone, inside the frontal bone also we have frontal air sinus. Okay, all are paired, two frontal, okay, two maxillary. Ethmoidal are three pairs, like we have anterior, middle and posterior, and sphenoidal is usually either, like if partition is there, it is two, otherwise one single sphenoidal air sinus will be there. Okay, so all these paranasal air sinuses, they are empty spaces inside the skull bone which make the skull bone light in weight. Do we find our skull bone heavy? No, it is so much light in weight. We are not feeling our skull bone heavy because it is all filled with air inside the paranasal air sinuses, and this air is also adding resonance to our voice. Okay, now all these paranasal air sinuses, air inside these air sinuses is communicating with exterior. That means it has opening in the lateral wall of the nose. Like for example, see, this is the sphenoidal air sinus. Okay, and the sphenoidal air sinus is immediately opening in the highest or the supreme concha. Okay, here in this area you call it as sphenoethmoidal recess. The shelf-like projections in the lateral wall of the nose are called as conchae. So this line is superior concha, the middle line is middle concha, and the lower line is inferior concha. And of course, this is hard palate. Superior nasal concha, middle nasal concha, inferior nasal concha. Okay, above superior concha, you will see the opening. This direct opening, whatever we are seeing, is the sphenoidal air sinus. Okay, then like in the superior meatus, area below superior meatus is below superior concha is superior meatus. Area below middle concha is middle meatus. Area below inferior concha is inferior meatus. So in the superior meatus, we will see the opening of posterior ethmoidal air sinus. In the middle meatus, you have U-shaped fold of ethmoidal bone, which is actually we have this ethmoidal bulla, okay, or bulla ethmoidalis. And here you will see there is an opening which is hiatus semilunaris, U-shaped hiatus semilunaris. In this hiatus semilunaris, you will see like it is all related to the openings of various paranasal air sinuses. Anteriorly, it is showing the opening of frontal air sinus, this U-shaped hiatus semilunaris. Anteriorly shows the opening of frontal, middle shows the opening of anterior ethmoidal sinus. Behind you will see the opening of maxillary sinus, and in this bulla ethmoidalis you will see the opening of middle ethmoidal air sinus. Now if you just observe this ethmoidal air sinuses in order, middle of hiatus semilunaris is anterior. As you move, proceed more like medially, you will see middle, and then we have the posterior ethmoidal air sinuses. Okay, so almost all air sinuses opening we have seen now. Sphenoidal in the highest concha, at the highest meatus. In the superior meatus, posterior ethmoidal sinus, hiatus semilunaris, frontal air sinus, and anterior ethmoidal air sinus, and maxillary sinus. And in bulla ethmoidalis, you will see the opening of middle ethmoidal air sinus. Okay, and in the inferior meatus, we see the opening of nasolacrimal duct. That is the lacrimal gland, what we have in the orbit. Superolaterally, you have the like lacrimal gland which opens here. Okay, beta. So all these openings are actually, oh, like we see they are opening. That means these empty spaces has a passage which is opening in the lateral wall of the nose. That means air what we have in the atmosphere is passing through these passages and entering into the paranasal air sinuses. So that air is filled here and the pressure outside in the atmosphere and inside the paranasal air sinuses is balanced and it is equal. Okay, so all paranasal air sinuses, they are lined with mucous membrane. Okay, and basically they also like humidify the air, like the moistening of the air is possible because of the mucosal lining. And then of course you have to talk about each paranasal air sinus now. I hope you understood like the general idea what I gave you. Frontal, ethmoidal, see anterior, middle and posterior in order, then sphenoidal, and then we have largest one is maxillary. Okay, so like that we have. So frontal air sinus lies in the frontal bone. Where does it open? And everything is given. Arterial supply, it is supplied by nearby artery, which is the artery in vicinity, that artery, like supraorbital artery. Supraorbital artery is a branch of which artery? Hema Ritika, please speak to me. No, say don't know at least. You people are not talking to me at all. It feels so like not at all active. It goes so passively if you don't interact. At least say don't know, no? Whether you are there or not also, I don't know.
Hello, yes, ma'am.
Not talking
Yes.
at all. Okay,
Yes,
beta.
sorry, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it should be interactive. I such also you are like we hardly meet per 1 hour per day, so we can talk nicely and learn
Yes,
subject,
ma'am.
isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
remember beta supraorbital artery is a branch of which artery?
Uh,
Okay, no problem. It is a
no,
branch
ma'am.
of, no problem. It's a branch of internal carotid artery, beta. So on either
Okay.
side of cavernous sinus, we have this internal carotid artery. Its branch is ophthalmic artery, which goes into orbit, isn't it? So the
Okay.
same artery enters
Okay.
into the scalp, supplying the scalp. Supraorbital artery, supratrochlear artery, isn't it? So because these arteries are very
Hmm.
close to frontal air sinus, the supraorbital artery is supplying. Okay. Venous drainage, we have supraorbital like superior ophthalmic vein. Lymphatic drainage, submandibular lymph nodes, nerve supply, supraorbital nerve. So all nearby structures only, beta. If you just remember supraorbital word, you can write same word for artery, vein, and nerve. Maxillary sinus itself can come as a separate question also, beta. So maxillary sinus is something like a box, like it's a like cube, beta. It has roof, it has floor, it has medial wall, it has lateral wall, it has anterior wall and posterior wall, like that. Okay, roof is actually formed by the floor of the orbit and floor is formed by the hard palate. Medial wall is formed by lateral wall of the nose, and laterally again you will see the maxillary bone only. Anteriorly true maxillary bone, posteriorly also sloping surface of the maxillary bone. Like that, just remember it is like a six-sided cube box. If you break the box, you will find empty space which is filled with air. And we know it is opening in the lateral wall of the nose, isn't it? With the hiatus semilunaris in the middle part of hiatus semilunaris. Okay, beta?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh. So maxillary air sinus is supplied by facial artery, infraorbital, greater palatine. Venous drainage, it goes into facial vein, pterygoid plexus of vein. Lymphatic drainage into submandibular lymph nodes. Nerve supply, posterior superior alveolar nerve. Sphenoidal, right and left sphenoidal sinuses lie within the body of sphenoid bone. They are separated by a septum. I said it like in the living body when you see live, you may or may not, but usually we have it's also paired. A septum is there and two sinuses are unequal in size. Each of them are opening just above the superior like meatus, isn't it? Like sphenoethmoidal recess. So like that, again nearby arteries you check better. Ethmoidal are 3 in number: superior, anterior middle and posterior ethmoid. Okay, so all these are paranasal air sinuses. So if there is any infection in these sinus, especially now in winter season, beta, if there is any infection, you see, if you just press here, they will get lot of pain in case of maxillary sinusitis. Headache, and if you palpate here, if they get pain, that is again ethmoidal air sinuses are full. Here, if you
Mhm.
press and check, that means frontal air sinuses. Basically, these air sinuses should be filled with air, but in case of infection, you will see fluid will get collected. Okay,
Okay.
so that condition is sinusitis. So
Okay.
basically, in case of maxillary sinusitis, generally we can approach through the I told you, maxillary air sinus is something like a box, no? So from this route,
Yes, ma'am.
that means the maxillary sinus is most commonly involved even in caries type of infection because the floor is formed by that only, no? So we can do an antral puncture, breaking the lateral wall of inferior meatus, so that we can allow the fluid to drain. Okay, or we can do
Mhm.
an incision at canine fossa through the vestibule of the mouth deep to the upper lip. Okay, that technique is called as lock operation. That means various routes, either through medial wall or through floor, we are approaching and we are draining the fluid. Sometimes
Mm.
cancers can also occur here, beta. Okay, sometimes because
Mm.
roof is formed by the orbit, no? So if there is any extra bony mass growth or mucous membrane overgrowth, it is leading to like cancerous invasion into the orbit, which will cause the eyeballs to protrude outside. Okay, you call it as proptosis, and it may lead to double vision, that is diplopia. Okay, so invasion in the floor may produce bulging and even ulceration of palate, and forward growth obliterates the canine fossa and produces swelling of face. So like
Ma'am, the
that,
diplopia point, can you tell once?
diplopia means double vision, beta. Suppose if
Okay.
there is cancer in the maxillary air sinus, those cancer cells are invading orbit. Okay,
Okay.
because cancer cells are invading orbit, the eyeball is protruding outside. That condition
Okay.
is proptosis. Because the optic nerve vision mechanism is disturbed, it is leading to double vision, that is diplopia.
O-
Okay, beta.
Okay.
So
Okay.
different types of sinusitis. See here, drainage. This is the maxillary air sinus, and this is canine fossa, through which we can drain, or from the lateral wall of nose. You can puncture and also you can drain in that way. Okay, beta, antral puncture. So that was our essay question. Basically, we can't say this is also 100 marks paper. The paper what you are going to solve for your final exam also would be for 100, no? So, but paranasal air sinuses, one of the sinuses will come for 5 marks. Most of the times, it has come as 5 marks only, 90% of the times. Rarely it comes as an essay, but we have discussed as essay. Now, what is claw hand beta? Okay, first let us finish off all the questions from head and neck, then we will move to vocal cords. Upper limb thorax book for our convenience. So, do you remember vocal cord beta? Larynx we have discussed as a separate topic.
Yes, ma'am.
No? Interior of larynx we have, right? Abba, next chapter only we have, so I need not search more. See, interior of larynx, the cut section of larynx in my PowerPoint also have shown you so beautifully the various folds, how they are formed, the paired, unpaired cartilages, isn't it? What are the paired, unpaired cartilages? The unpaired ones are thyroid,
Right.
epiglottis, and cricoid.
Episode.
Yeah, very good.
Record.
Paired ones, very good. Paired ones are arytenoid, carniculate, and cuniform. Then running between them, we have membranes, no? Like between the thyroid and cricoid, we have cricothyroid membrane. Between the hyoid bone and thyroid cartilage, we have thyrohyoid membrane. Okay, when you see the lateral view, you have quadrangular membrane, airy epiglottic fold. This is the cut section. It is something like this better.
Mm.
Okay, so this in this section, this is actually sagittal section only what you are finding. So in this section, first of all, we should be able to appreciate. See, this is thyroid cartilage. Then this is cricoid cartilage. Anteriorly, it has ring, signet ring. Posteriorly, it has lamina. No? Then above which it is resting arytenoid, above which we have corniculate and cuneiform. Now this leaf-shaped cartilage, what we are finding is epiglottis. So why I am discussing this picture, because here only whatever folds you are finding, these are nothing but vocal folds or vocal cords. So how is it formed? Upper part is formed by this green membrane, you call it as quadrate membrane, which is extending between the epiglottis and the arytenoid cartilages. Inferiorly also we have one more membrane. Okay, you call it as conus elasticus. The upper part of conus elasticus is vocal fold. Okay, and the lower part of the quadrangular membrane is vestibular fold. Between these two folds, the empty space is actually sinus of larynx, and this whole set of structure containing vestibular fold, vocal fold, and sinus of larynx is nothing but the vocal cords. Okay, so these vocal cords, which are shown like this in pink line, extending from these arytenoid cartilages. Okay, this is arytenoid. Okay, from here they are moving up to the thyroid cartilage. That means we have different set of muscles. If you remember, crico thyroid, cricoarytenoid, like intrinsic muscles of larynx also we have studied, isn't it? What are the various muscles? Like see here, cricothyroid, transverse arytenoid, oblique arytenoid, isn't it? Thyroarytenoid. All these muscles, what do they do? See, these are the vocal cords or vocal folds. They like contract in various directions to control the inlet of this vocal cords. So vocal cords are very important because they are concerned with the production of voice. Okay, so we
Mm.
have different movements which are performed by these muscles. It is shown here. So we have vocalis muscle, okay, which is pulling it towards medially. More medially is vocalis. As you move laterally, we have thyroarytenoid, okay. Then posterior cricoarytenoid, transverse arytenoids, lateral cricoarytenoid. The action of these muscles are actually responsible for adduction, abduction, okay. So these are the various movements which help in breathing and phonation. Okay. So here
Mm.
also we are giving various pictures which help us to understand. These are the vocal folds. Okay. So in quiet breathing, it is like this. A picture, intercartilaginous part of the arytenoid cartilage is kept open in quiet breathing. Okay. In phonation, that means when we are speaking, this intramembranous part is adducted. It's coming closer. During forced inspiration, it is still expanded, it is diamond shaped, and posterior cricoarytenoid muscle is contracting. And during like whispering, what happens? Lateral cricoarytenoid muscle is moving laterally. So like that, these are the movements of muscles which are controlling these vocal cords, which are helping in different types of production of sounds, whispering, slow sound, loud voice, noise, everything. Apart from that, it also helps in breathing. Okay, beta. So that is all about vocal folds or vocal cords. Okay. So singers nodes are teachers nodules are teachers who scream more to control students. So what happens? There may be formation of nodules. Laryngeal cancers and tumors are also like very common in this profession. Okay, beta. So
Mm.
this is one more section which is actually called as coronal section. So here also you are finding same these vestibular fold, vocal fold, sinus of larynx. Together you call these are all these vocal cords. Okay.
Mm.
So this is thyroid cartilage. Let's get oriented. This is thyroid cartilage. This is cricoid cartilage. These are the tracheal rings. Okay. And these are the quadrangular membrane. Okay, vocal membrane, what we have. So just read once, you will recollect and you will easily understand the importance of this vocal cords. Okay. For vocal cords, better you write interior or cavity of larynx. Whatever I have discussed now, just draw this picture from point 1 till oil can of larynx, like vocal folds, vocal cords. There we have lot of mucus glands. That's why you call it as oil can of larynx. Okay, till here. These points, even if you write, that is enough. If you can add like the muscles which are involved and which how they are controlling the vocal cords in production of sound and all, it will be more good, better. Okay,
Mm.
that is all about vocal cords. Mm, external jugular vein. How is it formed, better? External jugular vein. What are the veins we have seen in the scalp? Venous drainage of the face. Okay, we'll see once more. Do you remember supratrochlear vein, infratrochlear vein, facial vein, retromandibular vein? These are the various veins. Anterior division, posterior division. Anterior division joins the facial vein. Isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh. If I show you diagram, you will remember more. Yes, better here. See here. External jugular vein. See here, these are the supratrochlear vein, supraorbital vein draining into facial vein. Isn't it? This is retromandibular vein. It has anterior division, posterior division.
Mm.
Anterior division is draining into facial vein, which drains into internal jugular. Posterior division drains, posterior division of retromandibular vein drains into posterior auricular. Together, they form external jugular vein. External jugular vein drains into subclavian vein. So this picture will help you answer 3 questions better. Venous
Mm.
drainage of scalp, venous drainage of face, formation of external jugular vein. Okay, beta?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh. That is auditory tube. So where do we find auditory tube? It is connecting what and what, beta? Auditory tube. Auditory tube is also called as eustachian tube. When you talk about middle ear, it has 6 boundaries, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh. So one of the boundary is actually communicating with nasopharynx, no?
Mm.
And the name of the tube is eustachian tube, also called as the auditory tube.
Mm.
Okay, that is the anterior wall of middle ear. Anterior wall of middle, yes, but this one is eustachian tube or auditory tube. Anterior wall of middle ear is going to communicate with the nasopharynx by means of a tube called as eustachian tube. Any tubes always see middle ear is also an empty space. It is also filled with air. Wherever air is there, it has to have communication with exterior, for which you are finding this tube, that is the eustachian tube. Okay, that means air in the atmosphere through the nasopharynx is passing through this eustachian tube and entering into middle ear. Such a beautiful picture you can see here, better. Okay, this tube is eustachian tube, and this is our middle ear, and middle ear's anterior wall is here, and this is communicating through nasopharynx. Air in the nasopharynx through this tube will enter into middle ear, so
Mm.
that the air atmospheric pressure is maintained equally outside atmospheric pressure and here. So if there see
Okay.
this eustachian tube is oblique, no, in adults it will be oblique. That's the reason usually we don't frequently suffer with middle ear infections if we have any respiratory tract infection. But in case of small children, suppose if they have any respiratory tract infection, eustachian tube is straight in case of small children, in
Mm.
infants, because of which if any infection is there, directly the infection will move to middle ear. The infection of middle ear is called as otitis media.
Okay.
Otitis, inflammation of middle ear, otitis media. Okay, of course, it is seen in adults also, but not as frequently as we see in small children. Okay, beta. So this
Yes.
is about this auditory tube, also called as pharyngotympanic tube, also called as eustachian tube. It is trumpet shape. Just now what we saw it like connecting the anterior wall with the nasopharynx, 4 centimeter long. You can see the just now in the picture directed downwards, forwards, and medially. It's not straight, but it is making 45 degrees angle with the sagittal plane. It is partly bony and partly cartilaginous. Okay, bony part forms the posterior and lateral one third of the tube. It is 12 long, this part behind one. So it lies in the petrous part of the temporal bone near the tympanic plate. Lateral end is wide and it opens into the anterior wall of the middle ear cavity. Isn't it? Anterior wall only we have this tube. Then medial end is narrow. Then just after that, try to see the relation. Superiorly, it is related to canal of tensor tympani. Here it is shown for our convenience. Medially, it is related to carotid canal. What is the in the base of the skull? We have so many foramina holes. No, carotid canal gives passage to internal carotid artery. Laterally, it is related to cauda tympani nerve. It's a branch of facial nerve. One is enough better. Then we have this tube, this particular blue thing, whatever is shown is the cartilaginous part, which forms the anterior and medial two-thirds of the tube. It is 25 mm. It lies in the sulcus tubae. Okay, that is a part of the petrous part of the temporal bone. So when you cut and see, it is a triangular plate of the cartilage. Again, after that, you just try to understand the relations. So anterolaterally, it is related to muscle like tensor veli palatini and mandibular nerve. Two, you're right enough. Posteromedially, petrous temporal bone and levator veli palatini. Levator veli palatini is again muscles. Actually, muscles are shown here. This is levator veli palatini. This is tensor veli palatini. In between, we have superior constrictor muscles. This is the soft palate where we have palatine aponeurosis. After that, try to remember blood supply, ascending pharyngeal and middle meningeal arteries, which are the branches of like maxillary artery. Venous drainage, pharyngeal veins and pterygoid plexus of veins. Nerve supply, pterygopalatine ganglion. Okay, but that is enough better. And I told you like it is a communication of middle ear with exterior to equalize the pressure. Okay, infections also I told you. So just read once, that is the auditory tube or the pharyngotympanic tube or eustachian tube. Then this was our pattern also beta. When I was a student, we had for 100 marks. I was 95 batch. Same like this we used to get paper. Your pattern
Okay.
is of course little different, but here this is the way we used to get our paper.
Okay.
Mm, okay. Then microscopic structure of elastic cartilage. See, histology only 3 questions are here, no?
Mm.
Pituitary, tonsil, elastic cartilage. Okay. Lateral medullary syndrome or Wallenberg syndrome. This comes under medulla oblongata. We will see this. But Jorasia book, how much it is given, we don't know. Yeah, brainstem. Without much search, we are here, luckily. But how much information is given, we don't know. Yeah, it is here. But see, lateral medullary syndrome, it occurs due to blockage of posterior inferior cerebellar artery. We are now talking about clinical aspects of medulla oblongata. And posterior inferior cerebellar artery is actually supplying medulla oblongata and it is blocked. Okay, because of which medulla oblongata is not getting blood supply in its lateral part. And in the lateral part, we will see the exit of nerves like 9th, 10th, and 11th cranial nerves. The gross anatomy part, if you see beta, this one, this is the lateral part, right? So in the lateral
Mm.
part, you see here, we have which is the ninth nerve? This one. Glossopharyngeal is there, vagus is there, and the accessory is there. Okay,
Mm.
so ninth, 10th, these nerves, because the blood supply is not there, these nerves are damaged. Okay, so it will lead to features are same side paralysis. Okay, most of the muscles of soft palate, because ninth, 10th, and 11th cranial nerves are supplying muscles of soft palate, pharynx, larynx due to the injury of nucleus ambiguous, which gives fibers to glossopharyngeal vagus and also the accessory nerve. Okay, and in this syndrome you will see loss of pain, temperature on the same side of the face due to involvement of spinal nucleus and spinal tract of trigeminal nerve, loss of pain, loss of temperature on opposite side of the body due to involvement of lateral spinothalamic tract, giddiness due to involvement of vestibular nucleus. Okay beta, so this is
Mm.
all about lateral medullary syndrome. Okay, then supinator muscle, carpometacarpal joint, corpora quadrigemina. What is corpora quadrigemina, beta?
Midbrain.
Midbrain. Is it midbrain, beta?
Superior collicula and inferior collicula.
They are present very close to midbrain, right?
Okay.
Very good. All four together, you call it as corpora quadrigemina. Okay, but we will see it as a part of diencephalon. Okay, not here. So that
Okay.
means deeper parts of the brain. Deeper parts of the brain, what do we have? Thalamus, hypothalamus, metathalamus, isn't it? So
Mm.
there we will come across this corpora quadrigemina. Nice, I'm very happy you remember corpora quadrigemina components. Can I have some water, Hema?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Thank you.
Striatum. See, as a part of thalamus, we have these bodies. You see, medial geniculate body and lateral geniculate body. These are the parts of thalamus, beta, not midbrain. Hema, huh? Try to remember.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so here, the medial geniculate body, it is receiving afferents from auditory fibers from inferior colliculus, and from here the fibers are going to primary auditory area efferents. Okay, that is area number 41 and 42. So it is a relay station for auditory impulses. Similarly, we have lateral geniculate body, which is afferents are optic tract and efferents are primary visual cortex, area number 17, which is relay station for visual impulses. Okay beta, so like that you just try to study this metathalamus, part of thalamus, which has medial and lateral geniculate body. As you said, together they are called as corpora quadrigemina. So this is little expanded, whether you write in that way or this way, you have the same thing. Okay beta, so that is geniculate bodies. Circle of Willis. Ritika, what are the blood vessels involved, beta, in the formation of circle of Willis? Very simple question. This is
Uh,
Anterior cerebral artery.
Very good. Yeah. Question. The picture is here. Anterior, middle, and posterior cerebral arteries.
Posterior cerebral.
See here, beta. This is the area of pituitary gland, sella turcica. This is the area of cavernous sinus. We know on either side of the cavernous sinus we have internal carotid artery, if you remember, no? So from this internal carotid artery, we have middle cerebral artery. This is at the base of the brain, we find the circle of Willis beta. I'm giving you the orientation. See, this is the base of the brain, and here is our circle of Willis. Okay, this is the area of pituitary gland, right? This is internal carotid artery. The artery which goes like this is middle cerebral. The artery which goes front is anterior cerebral. Okay, then we have two vertebral arteries which will join to form basilar arteries. Here we have posterior cerebral. See, this whole thing is circle of Willis. So right vertebral artery, left vertebral artery will join to form basilar artery. Okay, so basilar artery is now giving to posterior cerebral. Internal carotid artery, it continues as middle cerebral. This is anterior cerebral artery beta. So anterior cerebral arteries are joined by anterior communicating. Then posterior and middle cerebral are joined by the posterior communicating. So overall it forms a circle which is called a circle of Willis. Okay. Now the other branches which we see coming from the circle of Willis are, these are the anteromedial group of small branches. These are posteromedial group we have. Then these are anterolateral group. Okay. Then we have posterolateral group. So all these groups will give blood supply to the base of the brain. Apart from this, if you observe from the basilar artery, this is actually lying over pons. This is our pons. That's why all these branches, these are called as pontine arteries. Okay. So from the vertebral arteries, if you observe, we have the spinal arteries also, like anterior spinal artery coming like this. We also have posterior spinal arteries. Okay. And we have blood supply going to cerebellum, posterior inferior cerebellar,
Terima.
anterior inferior cerebellar arteries. Okay. Try to learn this picture thoroughly and just give the labeling and give you explanation in your own words. That is circle of Willis. Rest of the questions, first we will try to cover upper limb, claw hand. What is claw hand, beta? Do you remember?
Ulnar damage.
Very good. Yeah. Huh. So we have partial claw hand and complete claw hand, right? Hmm. So ulnar nerve is
Yes,
supplying.
ma'am.
हाँ बेटा, ulnar nerve is supplying. Uh, can you tell me the distribution of ulnar nerve in hand, beta? Median nerve and ulnar nerve. Actually, both are involved in claw hand, right? Basically, 3.5 digits laterally they are supplied by superficial branch of median nerve. 1.5 digits they are supplied by superficial branch of ulnar nerve, isn't it? So
Ma'am, and ulnar nerve also supplies lumbricals, no, ma'am?
yeah, it is musician's nerve. It supplies so many muscles of the palm, almost all the muscles with few exceptions, isn't it?
Okay.
Except first two lumbricals and also one muscle of the thenar compartment. Okay. Ulnar nerve, 110. So that's what is claw hand. Dupuytren's contraction. So both nerves are involved, but clinical aspects are not discussed here, but just check where it is given and read once. Okay. So whatever we have discussed. Ulnar claw hand. See, that means 1.5 digits are supplied by ulnar nerve. See here, 1.5. This is the superficial branch of ulnar nerve. It goes and supplies the intrinsic muscles of the palm and also 1.5 digits medially. So if it is paralyzed, so what happens? Hyperextension of the metacarpophalangeal joints and flexion of interphalangeal joints involving ring and little finger. Okay. Suppose if median nerve is also involved, then you will see the rest of the fingers also will have same type of deformity. So this is partial claw hand. If median and ulnar both are involved, then it is complete claw hand. Okay, beta? So there will be sensory loss and the skin feels warm because of the permanent dilatation of the blood vessels, because sympathetic sensory supply will not be there. Okay, loss of sympathetic supply. So long standing cases paralysis will happen to the muscles which are involved here, and the skin also becomes dry, scaly. The nails also crack easily. Patient is unable to spread out the fingers due to paralysis. Okay, so that is claw hand. Mm. Oh, lateral ventricle is also given, no, as an essay. But lateral ventricle I discussed many times, no, beta. So what are the horns it has? Anterior horn, posterior horn, central part, and inferior horn. You should learn the pictures and just check the relations. And right and left lateral ventricles are connected by interventricular foramen of Monro. Okay. From here, the CSF will move to third ventricle. So just check the pictures and talk about relations, but it's quite easy only. Supinator muscle, just check origin, insertion, nerve supply, and action. Carpo-metacarpal joint. This we will see better. First, carpo-metacarpal joint. This is important also. What type of joint is first carpo-metacarpal joint? What are the bones involved better? Do you remember? It's a saddle type of joint. What do you mean by saddle joint? See here. This is the first carpo-metacarpal joint beta here. Okay, these are all carpal bones. She looks too pretty, try to catch her is the quote, right? Scaphoid, lunate, triquetral, pisiform, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, and hamate, isn't it? So between the trapezium and the base of the first metacarpal bone, we have a joint formed which is called as first carpo-metacarpal joint.
Carpometer.
Okay, you see concavo-convex surface of the base of the first metacarpal is fitting into reciprocally concavo-convex surface of this trapezium bone. Okay, so this type of arrangement, male-female surfaces also it is called as. So that is nothing but what type of joint? Saddle type of joint it is. Where is that given explanation? Wrist joint. Is this one better? First carpo-metacarpal is the only carpo-metacarpal joint which has a separate joint cavity, because of which free movements are possible, opposition movement is possible. It's a saddle variety of the synovial joint, okay, which is concavo-convex articular surfaces. Distal surface of trapezium and proximal surface of base of the first metacarpal bone. Okay, articulating surface of trapezium is concave in sagittal plane and convex in frontal plane. Concave or convex nature of articular surface permits wide range of opposition movements. So like any other joint, always try to remember or the margins of these bones which are involved in the formation of joint will give attachment to capsular ligament. Laterally, over the capsule, the thickenings are called as ligaments. Laterally, it is lateral ligament, anteriorly, anterior ligament, posteriorly, posterior ligament. Anterior relations would be muscles of thenar eminence, posteriorly, long and short extensors of the thumb. Medially, you will have first dorsal interosseous muscle, and laterally, we have abductor pollicis longus. Blood supply, radial vessels. Okay, radial artery, what we check for pulsation also. The nerve supply, median nerve. So movements of first carpo metacarpal joint is asked as 3 marks question also better. Flexion, flexor pollicis brevis, opponens pollicis. Extension, extensor pollicis brevis, extensor pollicis longus. Like that we have all movements, just go through once better. So clinical aspect, first carpo metacarpal joint can undergo degenerative changes with age, which is painful. Old people, they may complain pain here also, no beta. So as you see, there may be degeneration. Generally, we see with knee joint. Similar type of degeneration we may also find with the first carpo metacarpal joint. Okay, the synovial membrane may get inflamed and it may be painful. This is called as Curvain's tenosynovitis. Okay, inflammation and painful movement at this joint. Okay, so these two clinical aspects are enough better. Okay, then we have only histology and embryology topics now. Pituitary gland histology, what do we have beta? Anterior pituitary, like we have intermediate, then we have posterior pituitary. In the anterior pituitary, you have to draw acidophils and basophils, blue and pink. Basophils with blue and acidophils with pink. Okay, there also we have chromophobes and chromophil cells. Chromophobes are inactive cells and chromophils are active cells which are concerned with the releasing of various hormones like growth hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, all hormones coming from anterior pituitary. Posterior pituitary, we have only tracts, hypothalamo hypophyseal tract. So you should draw all pink lines. Okay, just refer this in your histology book better. Then tonsil, what do we see? Tonsil microscopic structure. What is the lining epithelium? Stratified squamous non-keratinized type of epithelium. And you will see all crypts, folds like this. And below that you will see collection of lymphatic nodules. Okay, development of parathyroid gland. What are the pharyngeal pouches which are involved here? Third and fourth. Fourth forms the superior parathyroid and third forms the inferior parathyroid gland. This everything I have explained beta in detail, just go through once because I don't have soft copy of these books now separately. I'm discussing in this way. Or to open so many books also is difficult. Just refer once. Elastic cartilage. What are the features we see in elastic cartilage? What is the outermost covering we have? Perichondrium. Below that we will see all elastin fibers running in various directions. Okay. Then we have those chondrocytes. The chondrocytes in case of hyaline cartilage, they are in the form of cell nests. Whereas here you do not find nest, they are seen individually here and there. And in between them, you will see all collagen fibers, elastin fibers. Chorion. What is chorion, beta? Amnion and chorion, these are the layers what we see which are taking part in the formation of placenta. Okay, just refer once embryology book beta for this. Okay, so we'll stop here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.